And welcome to tonight's class of Path of Awakening. We're continuing our journey through Francesca Fremantle's book, Luminous Emptiness. We're on chapter 8 of 10 in the first half of this book. And what she's doing in the first half of the book is providing us with all of the background information that we need to understand, or I should say, begin to understand the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Liberation Through Hearing, as she calls it, which is what makes up her commentary in the second half of the book. So we've had chapters titled A Book of the Living, which has really pointed out that the discussion of the Bardo, among other things, is really talking about our life now, as well as experiences that we would have in the the period of time between death and rebirth. We read a chapter entitled Liberation, subtitled Uncoiling in Space, which talks about the notion of liberation in the Buddhist tradition. In particular, uncoiling in space relates to the idea in Vajrayana of all confusion ultimately being self-liberated, seen through by prajna and jnana. We read it as well. It covered karma and how through the nidanas, through cause and effect, the links of interdependent origination, we create entire worlds and find ourselves in entire worlds, which relates very directly to what we'll be talking about tonight. We talked about hearing, the power of transmission, in which through the teachings, through the presence of the teacher, as well as through our own innate intelligence, we come to recognize our true state of being, our true nature. We talked about Bardo, the experience of nowness, the very immediate experience of Bardo or gap, between one experience and another, between one thought and another. We read about the elements, earth, air, fire, water, and space, and all that is made up of the five basic elements. We read about the skandhas, the five-step process of ego. And then last week we talked about the display of the awakened state, which involved the five Buddha families and the, in particular, the wisdom aspect of each one of those families. So tonight we're talking about 6 styles of imprisonment, the 6 realms of existence, the various states of being that any sentient being, which includes every one of us, could be born into, which obviously has a very direct relationship to Bardo, to death, and the Bardo of, she calls the Bardo of existence, or Bardo of becoming, where we, due to the force of our karma and the nature of our state of mind, we actually find ourselves born or reborn into a different realm. So, as she says to begin this chapter, we know that beings are made of the 5 elements and function on the basis of the 5 skandhas. And then she says, although every living being's true nature is the enlightened state, expressed as the 5 Buddhas, which we talked about last week, their enlightened energy, by there she means us, our enlightened energy, has become confused and distorted into the 5 poisons, which, as we know, are traditionally passion, aggression, ignorance, pride, and envy. And as a result of this, because enlightened energy is expressed in a confused and distorted way, that we end up becoming embodied in characteristic ways, which are the 6 realms of samsara. One thing I like about this chapter is she actually gives something of the flavor of each realm, as well as that within each realm there are different actual expressions or styles of expressions within each realm. Altogether, the 6 realms are one more piece of the wheel of life, the tanka that we began this book talking about. The realms are classified in different ways. Most traditionally, the 3 lower realms are called the lower realms, and then the 3 upper realms are considered the higher realms. So the lower realms are the hell realm, the realm of the hungry ghosts or pretas, and the animal realm. And then the higher realms are the realm of humans, which we're all in, the realm of the jealous gods or asuras, sometimes called titans, and the realm of the gods themselves. So those are the lower and higher realms. And sometimes they're classified a little differently as the two lowest realms, the two intermediate realms, and the two higher realms. So the two lower realms are the hell and hungry ghost realm. The two intermediate realms are the animal and human realm, and the two higher realms are the realms of the jealous gods and the realm of the gods. So they're presented or taught in somewhat different ways. The important thing to understand about the lower realms, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight, or at least my part of talking about tonight, and if we get through it, we might hear about the higher realms, or we might hear about the higher realms next week, depending on how this goes. But the important thing to understand about the lower realms is that they're the effect of negative karma is very strong. And so there's not only great suffering in the lower realms, tremendous suffering, but it's also very hard to escape or change out of these realms because of the intensity of the karma. And the more we understand that, the more we understand something of our own predicament in life in some ways. But the basic idea is that in, for instance, the hell realm, which is characterized by aggression, anger begets anger. Anger creates an ever more intensified world of anger. And it's very, very difficult for various reasons, which we'll talk about, for beings in the hell realm to be able to escape or be reborn out of the hell realm. It does eventually happen. Eventually, even negative karma exhausts itself, and there's some kind of openness, some kind of gap that allows for a better birth. But generally speaking, the reason the lower realms are considered lower realms is not only because the suffering is so great, but because it's very difficult, quite challenging to get out of one of the lower realms once one is born there. Not impossible, but difficult. In the lower realms, there's very little gap. It's hard to recognize whatever gap there might occur because of the momentum or the intensity of karmic experience, the intensity of the anger, the speed of the anger, the intensity of the sense of hunger and need, the grasping, the intensity of mind, and the seeming solidity of the projections of mind. So all of that is part of the difficulty of escaping, the difficulty of the lower realms. Or another way to look at why it's difficult to leave the lower realms is habituation. That the more someone identifies with an experience of the world as this is who I am, what I am, and the more that this becomes entrenched identity, this is who I am, this is what I'm comfortable and familiar with, the harder it is to let go. And that's really true in the lower realms, but I think if we look at our own experience, we realize there's something of that not anywhere near to the degree of intensity as what's experienced in the three lower realms. But there's something of that in our experience as well, or at least I can see it in my life. Speaking as, having worked as a therapist, that, I see people where they'll have some understanding that they need to change. Maybe they need to be in a different relationship, or they need to get out of a relationship, or they need to approach situations differently. And they'll see that, but it's difficult because of the extent to which they identify with what seems comfortable, familiar, and habitual. And that it takes time to wear out, exhaust patterns of behavior, patterns of habit, which is, I think, just another way of understanding a little bit of the mystery of what karma is. In any case, tonight we're going to begin by talking about the three lower realms. So I'll be your tour guide, and we'll be visiting on student visas. Do not get detained there. It's just there's also very little humor in the lower realms. So I'm trying to, before we start, trying to interject a little bit here. But the idea is that we could ask, as she does in the text, where do the realms exist? And the ultimate answer to that really is they exist in the mind of the being that's experiencing them. But what she says, and she acknowledges quite clearly, that we as humans only directly experience the human and animal realms, that we may have some belief in spirits or ghosts of some kind, maybe even have some experience of that. But that, as she says in the text, heaven and hell might seem strange to us. They might feel, nowadays there's very much a feeling that in some circles that heaven and hell are merely myths that are used socially to keep people in line and to that there are more methods of social control than any kind of a real thing. But in the Buddhist tradition, they're taken for granted. There is a sense of there being a hell and other realms as well that we can't see. She relates this, as she says, to the rich treasury of Indian legend, to which Tibetan legend was further added, by the way. And that only some of the the many myths and legends and beliefs in the Hindu tradition and in Tibetan Bon tradition for that matter, but particularly in the Hindu tradition, only some of them were really part of the Buddhist tradition, because a lot of it was seen as just the drama of samsara, as she says, and therefore not relevant to the Buddha's teachings on liberation. So a lot of them fell into that category of question and belief that the Buddha said did not edify. And the example he gave, the example that's given for that in the sutras is somebody who asked, well, where does this all come from? How did this all begin? What is the real beginning of all of this? And the Buddha's answer was that if a person were shot with a poisoned arrow, and they sit and ask, where did this come from? Why did this person shoot me? How was this arrow made? No, they want to get the arrow out. And the idea is that those questions, questions about God or gods or all of that, were taken by the Buddha to be questions that did not edify, that his interest was in liberation. What did we need to know? What did we need to understand in order to become free of samsaric existence? So some of it's interesting to think about, but the reality is that within these traditions, that as she says, there's a vision of the universe that's vast, with many different dimensions and levels that interpenetrate and interact, and that there are forms of life that are imperceptible to our senses, that coexist in the same space. And by imperceptible, what she means in particular is that our senses and perceptions and our consciousness determine the kind of world we live in. That we, as she says, we as humans can only experience the universe in our specifically human way. And this is actually something that Buddhist teachers, in the Buddhist tradition, a certain amount of reflection on this is very much part of the philosophical tradition, because it really gets at, again, the question to which, or the degree to which, the world we experience is the world we create with mind. So that, for instance, in some teachings it's pointed out that manure, which we would find disgusting and repulsive, to some animals, insects, is a feast, is a palace, is glorious. And so the nature of perception and experience is really highly influenced by, that's probably not the best word, but what I come up with in the moment, highly influenced by the nature of our birth. That as humans we share certain general karmic tendencies. If we were born and in the animal realm, we would share very different certain tendencies, as well as different sense perceptions and all of that. The way that a dog, for instance, experiences the world with their tremendous sense of smell is very different from the world the way we experience it. And this is true for all beings within the six realms. There's a different type of consciousness, different perception, different ways of thinking. As she says, animals have very different perceptions from humans, while beings in other realms are so different that we can only think of them in terms of what we already know. And so the beings in other realms, being the hell, hungry ghost, jealous god, and god realms that we do not perceive, we tend to think of them in animal-like or human-like forms, as she says. And with that, she indicates that the wheel of life, again, the tanka that she begins in the very discussing in the very beginning of the book, shows all life, not just humans. But in the Wheel of Life, in the Buddhist tradition, it said that there are 6 broad types of possible birth. And depending on our actions or our karma, we could be born into any. That our karmic actions determine our physical embodiment and underlying states of mind and the way we experience the world. Traditionally, this outer interpretation of the 6 realms as 6 real places, 6 real situations that we could be born into, is a motivation to practice Dharma. As she says, in a culture that accepts the belief in rebirth, contemplation on the endless cycle of life after life is very powerful and effective. But she says, for us who don't come from such a tradition, such a culture, it could be artificial to just accept this as articles of faith. So with this, she says, we need a deeper understanding of the inner meaning of the 6 realms before we can integrate them into our view of life. And she says, no one can really prove to us what happens, what lies beyond death. However, what we can do, and this is how we can begin to, and this is how Trungpa Rinpoche taught the realms, what we can do is investigate our own minds here and now and discover all of the worlds contained in our own mind and use that as a way of understanding the 6 realms. Or see the 6 realms, in other words, as various psychological states that we experience now, even though, again, at its heart, we experience them in a human way because we're born as human beings. So, as she says, when we watch our minds in meditation, we can see clearly how thoughts arise and cease, come and go. We can see something about how cause and effect operates, how things come together and come apart due to causes and conditions. We see how states of mind succeed one after the other, where it's certain feelings in the morning, very, very different feelings at midday, very different feelings and perceptions again in the evening, different states of mind. Just like one life after another. So in this way we can begin to develop a sense of what rebirth and after rebirth might mean. We can come to see how our imagined permanence is really a process of continual change. And as we see this in meditation practice, as we become more aware of the ongoing impermanence, the constant flux in our state of mind, in our feelings, in our perceptions, in our thoughts, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about the world around us, in constant change. It's not so hard to accept the idea of this continuing after death. Our mind is the only thing we can ever really know. I would also add to some of the things that we might come to see when we practice meditation, or even if we just contemplate our lives in some, in a really meaningful way, but particularly helpful with meditation because we actually slow down enough to pay attention and see what's happening. And we develop some clarity through settling the mind and actually see. I would add to what she presents here to say we also see how our thoughts can mushroom into entire worlds. That what Trungpa Rinpoche called in the path of individual liberation, the compendium of his Hinayana seminary talks, minute to expansion, how a single thought, just one thought, can develop into an entire fantasy. We can just start by thinking, oh, it would be nice to be in Hawaii, and we can let ourselves daydream, and suddenly we're on the beach and sun, and there's and we're completely forget where we are. We get completely lost in maybe a mini God realm moment of experience. And it can go the other way too. It can as well go that way with a negative thought. We can remember something that annoyed us, made us angry, and suddenly find ourselves becoming angry all over again. And in this way, we begin to get a feeling for what it would be like to go from realm to realm to realm, and that this is the nature of samsara. Samsara's cyclical existence, constant birth, death, and rebirth, realm after realm. In any case, so we can see how we create the realms, how realms come together from just a tiny flicker of thought. We find ourselves in an entire world. And we see this in meditation practice. Anyway, to return to the text, the point she makes is we continually create our own world by the power of the mind. We can see, and with this, as we see this, we can see that the realms have very real significance in our everyday existence. And she quotes Milton, John Milton: "The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven." So we realize that although we think of the world being a certain way, external to us, and that in reality, it's mind that makes the world. It's mind that experiences the world. And we really understand this, really have some experience of this. We begin to understand something of the line that we recite in the chant about the inseparability of samsara and nirvana, that ultimately it's a reflection of mind, or an experience of mind. In any case, to return to the book, Trungpa Rinpoche definitely presented the six realms as states of mind that we can experience, and felt that it was important to understand them this way while we have the opportunity to do so in this life. And he referred to them in various ways: as styles of imprisonment, which is the title of this chapter, as styles of confusion, styles of insanity, and fantasy worlds. So again, the important thing to understand, and this is throughout the entire Book of the Dead, Liberation Through Hearing, is that we tend to project a world of other, and without realizing that it's created by mind. And then being caught up in that duality of I and other is really what creates confusion in this life, and what creates confusion in the experience after death as well. And anyway, each of the realms, as Trungpa Rinpoche teaches, is a way of maintaining ego, a way of maintaining a solid sense of self in relation to some projected sense of other. It's a way of maintaining ego in the face of the possibility of awakening. As it says in the text, they arise from the kleshas, and when we allow these emotions to build up and take control, we find ourselves in the realms characterized by that klesha. So actually she used the word emotion there, but it's important to understand that the kleshas involve emotions, but they're really more than what we typically think of as emotion. That they're more than just a feeling, that each klesha really is also a whole way of perceiving, a whole way of feeling and thinking. Each klesha is a real solidification of self and other, and a drama between self and other. So that each klesha has that power to create an entire world, a world of aggression, a world of passion, a world of ignorance, and that these are the underlying force, the sort of that we circle with through the six realms. And in each case, as when we think of the realms as ways of maintaining ego, at the heart of each, there's a basic fear of losing ego at the heart of each realm. She says when we're immersed in a realm, it becomes impossible to distinguish inner from outer reality. And we can see this again if we look at our experience, if we reflect on our experience. When we're happy, things seem good, beautiful, enjoyable, and interesting. We treat others in a way that they respond positively to us. And when we're angry and irritable, it's just the opposite. Little irritations seem unbearable. We make up negative storylines about how we're victims or how unfair things are, and get totally caught up in a world of aggression and blame. We treat people harshly, and then we get the rebound from that. So again, when we're immersed in a realm, it becomes impossible to distinguish inner from outer reality. Again, styles of imprisonment, styles of confusion, fantasy worlds. So, as she says, the descriptions of the realms may seem intense, and they certainly do. But as humans, we experience the other realms only on the basis of our human nature. So we really, in terms of even understanding these as psychological states that we experience, we really only see the shadows of the other realms. She says there's some overlay between the five families and the six realms, and points out, and I think this will get clearer when we go through the second half of the book and we go through the process of the six bardos, particularly the bardo, the three bardos of dying, the bardo of dharmata, and the bardo of existence. But with the appearance of the peaceful deities, the Tathagatas that we talked about, they appear over 5 days and simultaneously. So this is in the bardo of dharmata. Excuse me. The peaceful deities appear over 5 days, it says in the text of Book of the Dead. And simultaneously on each day, a path of colored light leads to one of the realms. So the dead person faces a choice at this point. There's the bright, penetrating light of awakening that is manifested by one of the 5 Buddhas, one of the 5 peaceful deities, or a duller, softer, more comfortable light leading back to samsara. And if we think about it, it's in essence, certainly at least metaphorically, we can understand this as a choice we make every moment in our lives. That at any moment we could wake up to the brilliance, beauty of the world, or we can stay in our habitual patterns. And so in that respect, the appearances in the bardo are very different from the appearances that we experience now in this bardo of waking life. But in essence, the choice, the experience is the same of choosing to wake up or to remain asleep, to remain in fantasy world. So in that sense, it's again at its heart, essentially asking us or reflecting to us always this same choice that we have, and it's a choice we make every moment. So as she says, the fact that there are 5 kleshas and 6 realms introduces a bit of a problem. So with this, they add a 6th poison. Greed is distinct from passion. You could think of greed as intensified passion, I guess. But that each realm is connected with one of the kleshas, one of the 5 poisons. So the hell realm in particular connects with aggression. The hungry ghost or the praetor realm connects with greed, which you could think of as strong passion and attachment. The animal realm is connected with delusion or ignorance. The human realm is connected with passion. The realm of the jealous gods or the asuras is envy, jealousy. And the realm of the gods is connected with pride. So, as again, Trungpa Rinpoche also related the 6 realms to each of the 6 bardos. And she points out that all living beings go through all 6 bardos, but in particular with each realm, there's a bardo experience, a relationship to the peak experience of, it's the peak of intensity in the bardos that's connected with each realm. And she says the experience of in-betweenness has an extreme quality, as if we were on the edge of a cliff, not sure if the next step will kill us or free us. And that this happens whenever the heightened, intensified quality of emotion reaches a peak. It suddenly presents a gap, a gateway to awakening. We can either go through it and awaken from the dream of the realm we are in, or remain imprisoned in our habitual patterns of thought. So again, the idea is when the peak experience of the realm, the peak experience of each bardo, there's always that possibility of waking up. There's always that possibility. As for which realm connects with which bardo, she actually goes through that each individually as we go through the realms. So stay tuned for that. But with this, we'll enter the realm of hell beings. I think many of you were with us when we read Patrul Rinpoche's book, Words of My Perfect Teacher, because that book also describes the realms. More, not so much as psychological states, but still, it was very vivid descriptions of the hell realms and the hungry ghost realms and so on. But in any case, the hell realm is the realm that's caused by extreme aggression and hatred, and is in that sense it's the most intense, claustrophobic, and confined realm. There's always a sense of things impinging, squeezing, tightening with the hell realm, a sense of no space, a sense of threat, attack, incursion, violation. All the emotional poisons are addictive, she says. They appear necessary to keep us going and provide a reason for our very existence. And for this, aggression in particular is difficult to let go of because we feel so strongly that we're right and that the problem is someone else's fault. So long as we project blame somewhere else and feel that we're aggrieved, this particular drama between self and other is really difficult to let go of when we're really in its grip. Or another way to say about the addictive nature of the five poisons is that they have their own internal circular logic. That once we accept the point of view that we're under attack and someone else is wrong for attacking us, it's very hard to let go of that when we really get caught up in it. So there's a circular logic, you could say, to the kleshas of each realm. In any case, with the hell realm, acting out an aggression might provide short-term relief. This is another reason why it can be addictive and hard to let go of, because it might be an initial feeling of some kind of relief, some kind of space, but it always bounces back at us. And she says, we want to destroy the world that causes so much pain, but instead we find the world as a mirror filled with our own reflections. And this is the thing. So the more aggression we put out, the more we see the world around us as aggressive, dangerous, threatening, challenging in some way, irritating, confining, squeezing. That the state of mind that we're in we project into the world around us. And so we just create an entire world of hell. So that with the hell realm, there's a constant sense of pain and irritation, a constant sense of threat, a constant sense of being obstructed, if not attacked. There's fear and terror when we're not enraged. And most importantly, there's no room or very little room to experience any kind of relaxation or openness. There's this constant reactivity, constant aggression, constant getting back at. As she points out, there are two broad types of hell, one being the hot hells and the other being the cold hells. And within each, there are different levels of intensity. But the basic idea is that blazing anger, really hot anger, characterizes the hot hells. As she says, we'd like to burn up the world with the force of our anger, but instead we end up being consumed as well. And she says, people in this realm cannot often see their own aggression and are unaware of the effect they have on others. They feel it's only they who are suffering. Each one of the lower realms in its certain way can be self-centered or self-focused, but the hell realm, because there's so much pain and so much intensity, is particularly that way. And as she says, with the intensity of the hell realm, it feels like the whole environment turns against you. Traditionally, it's said that in the hot hells, the earth feels like red-hot iron, that water is like molten iron, that the air is scorching, and that there's just no escape. There's just no escape in any direction. So again, there's that sense of claustrophobia and confinement. She says in the first level of the hot hell, and there are 8 levels of hot hells, but in the first level, inhabitants attack and kill each other, which again reflects how aggression invites further aggression. Aggressive response invites aggressive response back. So that there's, in the various hells, there are just ceaseless torment of being cut, burned, tortured. And she says the torturers are the projections of the mind consumed by hatred. The only sentient beings in hell are those who suffer there. And the stronger the grasping onto this identity, the stronger the projections. And so the landscapes in hell are hellish, desolate landscapes with grasses and leaves that cut like razors and knives, rotting corpses, flames and fire. And those are the hot hells. And, I think if we were to reflect honestly at our moments of great anger, it's not that we see rotting corpses or we get cut, but metaphorically it makes a lot of sense. That's how we experience the world, with great anger. And that there's a real intensity and reactivity to it, and everything becomes a threat or a challenge in some way, and everything feels like that there's just no room. It feels claustrophobic and confined. The cold hell, contrarily, kind of represents is a result of frozen anger, where someone withdraws into themselves and look out at the world with bitterness, resentment, judgment, contempt, and hatred. It's a state of depression and despair. And that with the cold hells in particular, this can happen in the hot hells as well, but particularly in the cold hells, anger can get turned in on oneself and can experience self-loathing, just a cutting, merciless self-criticism with the cold hells. And with this, there's a self-enclosed isolation. And traditionally, in the descriptions of the cold hells, it's saying that beings there are tormented by such great cold that the skin cracks and blisters and cracks open. And then, she says around the hells, there are ephemeral hells where beings are trapped in rocks, trees, and I'm not as familiar with that. But again, I think what it comes down to is, again, the sense of confinement, claustrophobia that's part of the hell realm, a sense of being obstructed, a sense of being held back, and again, with some attribution of unfairness and blame. She says that the distorted logic of aggression always justifies itself and put the blame on others. We become so convinced that our suffering depends on the external situation that we don't even consider the possibility of changing our attitude. This is the logic of, I can't let them get away with that, or I need to teach them a lesson, or what's right is right. Those kinds of logics that we get into, or we just get very rigid in our anger and aggression. It's said that traditionally for hell beings, life in hells lasts for eons. But the reality is that a hell being, as she says, just experiences an unbearable present that one constantly tries to escape or fight back against constantly. And at some point, finally, after eons, or at least it's certainly experienced as eons, eventually aggression exhausts itself, and there might be a moment of remorse, regret, a moment of pity for another being, some sense of, some awareness of some other being's suffering. And with that, there may be just enough openness, just enough gap to be able to leave the hell realm. She says the Buddha that manifests in the hell realm is Dharma Raja. There's a Buddha in each realm. Dharma Raja, or Dharma King, who offers water and fire, which both soothes the torment of beings in the hot hells and the cold hells, respectively. Water and fire. But she says on a deeper level, the contrast of water and fire, cold and hot all at once, might present some openness, that there might be, because of the contrast, there might be just a moment of being able to see through the intensity. And I guess we could think of that in a general sense, that any moment of contrast presents an opportunity for us to open up and let go. But in particular, that's how it works in the hell realm. She says in Liberation Through Hearing, the path to hell, nothing to do with good intentions. The path in hell appears at the same time as the Buddha Akshobhya, the Buddha of the Vajra family. And she says, quote, the overwhelming weight of negative karma in this lowest realm seems to place itself at a vast distance from the awakened Vajra qualities. Yet there is still the possibility of intelligence and clarity breaking through. Any glimpse of awakening is always connected with a bardo in the sense of a gap where the solidity and certainty dissolve. Trungpa Rinpoche, again, as we said before, related the hells to the different bardos. And in particular, it said that the hell realm is particularly associated with the bardo of dying, where all the elements and components of the self dissolve, or letting go of everything that we've identified with in this life, our body, the elements in the body, anything we possess, all of that. And that at that moment in the bardo of dying, there's a peak of intensity. And at that moment, as she says, we're poised between two alternatives. There's a sudden opportunity. And with this, there's a sudden opportunity to see beyond the extremes of existence and annihilation of ego. So the extremes of existence and annihilation both involve in some way holding on to ego, either with hope and fear. And the point is being able to let go of both and just be able to rest in wakeful experience. In any case, we will depart the hell realm and move on to the realm of the hungry ghosts, or pretas. This realm relates to the experience of passion, but again, it's a passion with a sense of greed, a sense of real need and desire, intensified, unsatisfied desire. It's less intense than hell, but there's still great suffering in this realm as well. It's because there's a constant sense of hunger, a sense of starvation, a sense of need, poverty, destitution. There's a sharp and painful hollowness to the experience of this realm. Just a constant sense of needing something external, that we need to take something in, that we're lacking in something that we desperately, painfully, hungrily need. So there's a constant sense of something that's desperately needed, that's lacking. And that's the emotional experience at the heart of this realm. So in terms of a drama of self or other, the self is in great need, and other is something external that's felt to be lacking, that's hungrily, greatly desired. But because of the nature of the hungry ghost realm, there's constant dissatisfaction, constant. It's truly the realm of can't get no satisfaction. Anyway, she says there are many types of beings in this realm. And I thought it was interesting because she goes through a certain amount of some of the Hindu mythology here as well. And I thought it was interesting to think of these as metaphors for different psychological states or psychological dilemmas. So for instance, she talks about one, which I'd never read before, but the idea of that one way in which pretas or hungry ghosts come into existence is through the Hindu god Brahma, who embodies the creative energy of desire, and who by this great mental power, mental creativity, created the first female, his mind-born daughter, to whom he was then attracted to. But because he also embodied goodness, truth, and purity, he has to struggle to control his feelings. And the pretas actually come out from the sweat of this internal conflict. So here you have that sense of constant dissatisfaction. What you have is the pain of ambivalence, the pain of conflicting feelings that leave one in a constant state of dissatisfaction. And also, when you think about it, it's all mentally created, literally mentally created in this case, that we love our projections, but we can't own them, we can't control them. Or as Trungpa Rinpoche says in the Sadhana Mahamudra, we've been fool enough to believe that we our own projections. In any case, in general, pretas, hungry ghosts, experience constant restlessness and desperation. And she talks about the Gandharvas as well, celestial musicians who live on fragrances and scents. And these are connected with the consciousness of a dead person during the bardo of existence, which I still like bardo of becoming better. The bardo where we're looking for a rebirth, essentially. Searching for a womb to reborn in. The realm of the hunger, and for this reason, which she'll talk about a little bit more at the end of this section, but the hungry ghost realm is particularly connected with the bardo of existence, or the bardo of becoming. The important thing is that it's that need that drives one to desperately seek rebirth. So she goes through some descriptions of some of the various spirits that might inhabit the hungry ghost realm. And I think, again, might be a little interesting to think about is all the different ways that within the realm there are different expressions of this hunger and need. So, for instance, there are aggressive and angry spirits that steal life force, very much like the notion of vampires. That again, hunger, need for some sort of sustenance that they take from other people. She talks about the demons in Tibetan medicine that cause illness, usually by creating some kind of imbalance, some kind of physical, mental situation that's out of balance. She talks about rakshasas, which are flesh-eating, blood-drinking spirits of lust and greed. So often the hungry ghosts are described as having very thin, narrow neck and small mouth and huge bellies. So there's, again, even just metaphorically, tremendous need in this belly and tremendous difficulty experiencing enough satisfaction, being able to take in enough. They can never take in what would satisfy. The hungry ghosts often see mirages, visions that provide great satisfaction, but when they actually try to eat or drink, take in the substances, the idea is that what at first looks delightful and tempting turns rotten, putrid, foul, and disgusting, or poisonous, spicy, super hot, burning, so that it becomes indigestible. In other words, they can never experience a real satisfaction of need. That's at the heart of this realm. Or they see what looks delightful but are chased away by guardians when they try to get near. So the overall thing with the hungry ghost realm is there's an overpowering sense of need that doesn't allow any enjoyment or appreciation. And with this, there's a total self-absorption due to these painful feelings of neediness. And as you can see, because so long as there's this constant hunger, constant need, it's a karma that creates the karmic momentum that constantly keeps it going, keeps feeding on itself, quite literally. She says it's easy to see in the human realm that we could, think of people we know who are tremendous, never satisfied, constant need, constant insecurity, constantly needing some kind of reassurance or sustenance of some kind. As she says, even, very wealthy people, billionaires, might feel needy, desperate, clinging, a sense that there's not enough. There's some story about the author, Joseph Heller, who wrote Catch-22, being at a party in the Hamptons, in a very wealthy part of Long Island, and having some person come up to him who was, I think, a stockbroker or something like that, and person talking about how much money he made, and he'd written this one book, but for a long time hadn't written anything else, and so it was a bit of a put down. And when the guy walked away, somebody said to Joseph Heller something like, I guess, we'll never have what he has. And he says, well, I have one thing he doesn't have. And he says, well, what's that? Enough. And that's the absolute difference between the hungry ghost realm, the neurosis of the hungry ghost realm, and a very different experience. In any case, easy to see in human nature. There's always a sense of needing more. It can be, as she says in the book, it can manifest itself in addictive collecting. And at first something gives pleasure, but then it's not enough. Or once having it, it loses its allure. They want something, have to have the next new thing. So there's a real insatiable quality to this. She quotes Trungpa Rinpoche as saying, any type of hunger for any type of object, material wealth, knowledge, whatever, ideas, romantic partners, object of any kind of hunger like that belongs to the hungry ghost realm. And it gets to the point where the search, the hope, and the expectation are more important than the actual attainment. She connects some examples of hungry ghost psychology to some of the different categories of distorted perception that hungry ghosts experience. So she talks about people who are never satisfied because they're always looking for an ideal place to live or an ideal partner or the ideal job or whatever it is before they can be truly happy. It's like hungry ghosts who can't find food or only perceive it as a mirage, something distant. The hungry ghost who's chased away from satisfaction is like people who feel they don't deserve what they want and somehow sabotage themselves. They perceive obstacles to deny themselves fulfillment. And she says those who cannot take satisfaction in what they have are like ghosts with thin necks and big bellies, just like the hungry ghosts. Tells that the hungry ghost is all take and no give and treats everything as objects of consumption. And again, goes back to, folklore, where literally ghosts draw all the warmth out of a situation. Is that chill that someone is supposed to experience before they experience a ghost. But again, it's just sucking the energy out of situations, sucking the energy out of others. The hungry ghost realm, she says, has affiliations with both Padma and Ratna. Both are passionate energies, but obviously there's some difference in them. But they're both passion-related energies. But the Buddha that appears to beings in the hungry ghost realm is Amitabha of the Padma family. And the path that leads to it in the Bardo is described as produced by passion and meanness, and accumulated intense passion. Trungpa Rinpoche linked the hungry ghost realm to Ratna, where there's a twist of pride and poverty. But the Buddha that appears in this realm is Jvalamukha, red in color, so again connected to the Padma family, glows with limitless light and holds a vessel of ambrosia that satisfies every need. So again, it's a true satisfaction. But as she says, but to partake would mean giving up existence as hungry ghosts. So there is a suspension of hope and fear, grasping and letting go, typical of the bardo of existence, or bardo of becoming. The gap of bardo is a moment of opportunity to give up the extremes of hope and fear. And hope and fear is in particular what characterizes experiences in the bardo of becoming. We're desperately seeking rebirth. So I can see the connection to the hungry ghost realm. The other thing I'll say about the hungry ghost realm is, and this is again speaking more not from the point of view of human experience of hungry ghost realm, which is again, it's always a human experience of the realm, is that one can work forever trying to satisfy someone in the hungry ghost realm by trying to provide an offer, but ultimately what needs to happen is the person who's really trapped in that kind of experience needs to have some basic appreciation of what they have and what they are. And until they have that, the hunger is unceasing. And that's, I guess, another way of connecting it to the Ratna family, because it's Ratna that in its wisdom manifestation enriches and allows us to perceive the richness we already have, so that again we realize that we don't need to look for some external sustenance. I mean, ultimately, obviously biologically we do, but psychologically speaking, that when we recognize our true nature, we have what we need, and we don't need to be caught up in the ceaseless hungry ghost drama of constantly seeking nurture and sustenance from something external to us. All right, so we will leave the hungry ghost realm and move on to the realm of animals. And she points out, first of all, this is a realm we can observe. And when we see and we know animals, they live on the same plane that we do. And with this, it becomes clear, as she says, quote, descriptions of the realms are meant to bring out the essential underlying emotional quality of each type of existence. So what she's saying here, I think, is that we know there are a lot of different kinds of animals. That animals range from the most vicious and aggressive to the most loving and docile. There's a range of animals. That there's a range of intelligence within animals and different personalities even within different species. You can have dogs that are loving and loyal, dogs that turn on people and be quite vicious. So that each realm in talking about the realms, you end up with being describing something of a bit of a caricature. We're actually trying to describe the characteristic elements that kind of signify a realm. But within each realm, there are many, many different expressions, many different styles of expression. There are different ways of experiencing aggression. There are different ways of expressing the hunger and need in the hungry ghost realm. And there are different ways of expressing the delusion or ignorance, that is the klesha that characterizes the animal realm. She talks about how, generally speaking, animals are considered innocent and that they don't understand good and evil, that they're seen as inferior to humans, and said in Christianity that animals don't have souls. But in Buddhism, it's said that all beings, animals, but all beings in any of the six realms have Buddha nature. But because of their essential nature, the true nature, Buddha nature, is obscured by ignorance, that they're all subject to the law of karma, cause and effect. And the suffering felt by animals is caused by and results in continual bewilderment and confusion that's rooted in fundamental ignorance. In the hell realm, it's confusion rooted in aggression. In the hungry ghost realm, it's confusion rooted in greed. But in this case, it's ignorance or delusion. And she says animals have their own intelligence. They act directly and instinctively. But she says they don't ask questions about their own existence. They don't look into their own mind. I read something once about, as I think you know that they've been able to teach apes sign language. But there are certain kinds of questions that I guess even all apes who have ever been successfully taught sign language as a way to communicate, there's types of questions that they've never asked. It just hasn't come up. So I kind of see what she's getting at. I'm trying to remember the exact reference that I read, but it's a certain kind of level of self-reflection that animals don't seem to be capable of, even the most intelligent animals. But they do have an intelligence of a certain sort. We see that. They're very much capable of intentional behavior. In some cases, perhaps even deliberate behavior. But most animal behavior is intentional. They have a reason to get what they want to get, but they're not necessarily, it's not deliberate in the sense of, I'm choosing this among many choices that I could make, including the choice to wake up, from a Buddhist point of view. So it's intentional behavior, but that's not the same as deliberate behavior. And sometimes we get confused about that. She says they perceive the world entirely in relation to themselves. They experience self and other, but only in terms of self, which is what Buddhism called delusion. It's the creation of a world of one's own, a cocoon for one's separate individual existence. And with that, she says that the activity of animals is always directed toward immediate needs. They can be quite patient, persistent, and stubborn in this pursuit, but they're only concerned with their own survival and propagation of the species. In other words, there's no greater reflection. Animals don't ask what's the meaning of life. Animals don't reflect on is there a higher purpose to why I'm here. They just, they take care of their needs. And they can be quite loving in doing that, but it's, again, not that kind of level of self-reflection. Suffering, and she saw how much suffering in the animal realm comes from the fight for survival. That for animals that are prey, there's constant fear, constant vigilance, constant paranoia, constant worry about being attacked, killed, and eaten. That animals that hunt, there's a constant exhaustion from hunting, and the degree to which they're at the mercy of environment and climate. There's just a constant struggle for survival in the animal realm, let alone that animals are also afflicted by old age, disease. They have less opportunity to shelter themselves from hot and cold the way human beings do, because of our ability to invent and create. So there's suffering in the animal realm. Although she said she says there's this there's continually reinforcing this state of self-concerned delusion, which binds them to rebirth in this realm or lower realms based on greed, neediness, or aggression. But she says some of the greatest suffering they experience is at the hands of humans, who hunt them, eat them, exploit them. I remember reading once somewhere some vision of the animal realm, of animals being slaughtered, cows for beef or pigs for pork, and just birth after rebirth in these farms where they're just bred purely to be slaughtered and not being able to escape this constant cycle of birth and rebirth, only to be slaughtered and be born again. So again, a lot of the suffering of animals comes from humans. She says and then she begins talking about how the animal realm mentality can manifest in humans. As she says, much of human existence seems to be spent in an animal state of mind. Can be an embarrassing thing to contemplate, speaking personally, but basically it's just it's a state of mind where it just takes whatever comes along without reflection, without any kind of analysis, kind of being half asleep on autopilot or like standby on the computer, just plodding along with blinders on. It's a state of mind, it's a psychology, animal realm psychology in the human realm, that can be very content and materially productive, tends to be very conventional, dependable, serious, that everything's just the same today as yesterday and will be the same tomorrow. There's a degree of ignorant comfort, security, that a person can become attached to. They can be very loyal to families and groups that they identify with, just like herd animals, but distrustful of outsiders. And the point that she makes is that a person stuck in an animal realm mentality, doesn't mean that they are animals, but animal-like mentality, don't really want to think about things or be challenged in any meaningful way. They're very comfortable in their ways, very comfortable just doing things the same way that their ancestors did or whatever, without any real reflection, without really thinking about any other kind of purpose. it tends to be an animal realm mentality, tends to not be very ambitious. They'd rather follow than lead. Not very curious. As she says, any behavior that we could think of as instinctive, automatic, or habitual partakes of the animal realm mentality. Animals like routines and are anxious when it's disturbed, and so do people who are in animal realm-like mentality. There's always a sense of limitation and absence of vision with the animal realm mentality, animal realm psychology in humans. What's new can be upsetting because it challenges, it provokes, it upsets the apple cart. The animal mentality is practical and down to earth, but indifferent to beauty, indifferent to vision. Animal-like humans, she says animal-like humans are very easily controlled and manipulated by external influences, society, religion, politics, whatever that might be. And she says it's the ignorant and credulous part of our nature that allows us to be used in this way. And then she talks about how people will say that really violent or aggressive behavior or really gluttonous behavior is called animal-like, but she feels it's more likely related to the hungry ghost and hell realms, that the flavor of the animal realm is more one of confusion and unawareness. The animal realm has a lot in common with the Buddha family. The family that manifests in its wisdom aspect is all-encompassing space, but here is dullness and routine and lack of vision, kind of a shutting down, closing in, cocoon-like existence. But not in the liberation through hearing. Actually, she says it's not connected to any of the five families, and the pathway to the animal realm doesn't appear during the visions of the five peaceful deities, but rather occurs later in the bardo. So when we get to the second half of the book, we'll see exactly where that happens. The Buddha who appears in the animal realm is Dhruva Simha, which means steadfast lion. And his color is blue. If you remember from last week, blue and white are both colors associated with Buddha and sometimes with Vajra, but both associated with the Buddha family. And this particular Buddha holds a sacred text representing the entire Dharma. And as she says, the important thing here is the notion that something's being presented in written form, that language marks a crucial stage in the evolution of consciousness, and so represents the higher intelligence that must be awakened to free animals from the bondage of ignorance and self-satisfied delusion. And Trungpa Rinpoche and his association or relation between the realms and the different bardos connects the animal realm with the bardo of dreaming. Again, we can stay in a dream, stay in confusion, stay in what might be perhaps a very comfortable, soothing dream, or we can wake up. And that's the question, as is the question we're presented with in every moment in the bardo, and in a way, in every moment of waking life now. Am I asleep or awake in this world that I seem to be in? So those are the three lower realms, and I think we'll stop there and we'll cover the higher realms next week. But again, if there are any questions or comments, we have some time for discussion. Or maybe I'll ask a question and people can decide if they want to answer or not. Of the different realms that we read about, and in particular the three realms that we described tonight, is it possible for people to see how we experience something of these realms in our present life? Not necessarily to the degree of intensity that's described in the actual realms, but something of the realm in our own personal experience. Or someone who doesn't, this is completely foreign. Ed?
I would say yes, particularly the hungry ghost realm. When you obsess about something, when you you uh, focus on it, or let let a desire or a perceived need control you to the point where you lose perspective of what you're doing. And there's so many ways we can do that. I mean,
Hmm.
you can do that with money. You can do that. You can do that with a lot of things. Um, so I think, and then I was reflecting. There's certain people that you encounter in life, and you can see their obsession with whether it's a need to control, or to arrogate things to themselves, or to always be the boss. Lots of examples of that, I think, that we encounter.
Hmm. Hmm. I would agree. John?
I think I've met many people who demonstrate one realm or another. I always think when we talk about the hungry ghost realm, I remember in college, I belonged to a club. They had what were called secret societies um, at Yale, this was. And I belonged to one of them. And
Hmm.
there was this one fellow, um, let's call him Fred. You won't even use his real name. And we all dressed. At Yale, you had to dress in a coat and tie to go to dinner, to go to any meal. So generally, we walked around in a sport coat and either had a tie on or had it in our pockets, ready to put on. And I remember this fellow always coming up to us when we were standing in a group, wanting to be included. And I always felt of him that he felt that he was less than, and that we were more than, and that he wanted to be accepted by us, included by us. There was this hunger, neediness.
Hmm.
Whenever I read about the hungry ghost, I think of him, and I remember his name too.
Uh-huh.
Um, he was so prototypically hungry ghost, feeling of neediness and lack.
Yes. Vicky?
Yeah, I mean, I would think one of the most obvious ones is the epidemic of eating disorders in different parts of society.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, and all the psychology, I'm sure the therapists here know to put those principles in the principles that the fundamentals that go into that, just the sense of, the experience of unending lack. And but then social media makes it even worse with the sites that glorify it and attract, it just turns into this cycle that kind of keeps consuming itself without consuming, or
Yes.
not.
Yeah, social media is an interesting phenomenon. Yes. There used a comedy book that was out years ago, How to Make Yourself Miserable. And there were a lot of exercises that recommended you do to make yourself unhappy. And one of them was to compare yourself to, it said random people that they picked. And I can't remember who the other ones were, but the one I remember was Wolfgang Mozart, who wrote symphonies at age 6. Compared yourself to, So there's always, if you get into that kind of mentality, it's endless. It was actually a very funny book. I have to see if I have it somewhere. But with the other thing about eating disorders also is the distorted perception of oneself
Mhm.
that is involved in it is similar to the distorted perception that, hungry ghost. Um, yeah. Val?
Thank you, Michael. This was very illuminating. And I particularly love and will remember Joseph Heller's comment,
Uh-huh.
I have enough. Thank
Like
you.
one thing he doesn't have. I have one thing he doesn't have enough.
No,
Yeah, I like that. I definitely, I can see something of myself in, or something of these realms in myself at different points in time. There are times when I'm very happy to just be very comfortable and not have anything upset the apple cart, which I'm learning that in particular, if I don't do something fairly active in the first half of the day, it's really easy to settle into just being comfortable the second half of the day. And then moments of real irritation, I guess, can be like little mini bursts of hell. I think I don't have to commute anymore, so I don't have to be anywhere at a particular time, which is a very nice thing with retirement. But when I did, driving sometimes brought out the worst in me. And again, what they say about the sense of claustrophobia, that was part of it. It was that sense of impingement and tightness of claustrophobia in terms of time as well as space. And at some point they realized, all right, I created this myself, and therefore I can let it unwind myself if I just stop feeding it. But moments of intense irritation can come up sometimes. So to me it was, I could see something of these realms and the others that we'll talk about next week as well. Mark?
Hi. I was just looking. I'm sorry, I'm going off the point, of course, as usual. Um, I was looking at the quote of Milton, and the mind is its own place and in itself, and make heaven of hell and hell of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking of those. Well, I don't know. I think it's interchangeable in a way. Well, I don't know. Like, well, for one thing, I was thinking of those kids that got stuck in their cave, and they all had a good experience with meditation, and
Mm-hmm.
I think their teacher or a coach helped them to meditate in in the blackness of a cave that they couldn't get out of for several weeks till they got out,
Mm-hmm.
and they were okay. Uh, and also, I was thinking that the experience of being in the forest for me is wonderful, but twice in my life I've gotten lost in the forest, and all of a sudden that beautiful forest, my perception had changed, and all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden it was really a scary place with the sun going down and the weather being kind of bad,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and being on a boat in a squall, and all of a sudden loving being on a boat and then not loving it, and I don't know, is it so it is in our mind, but at the same time, it's an experience of life that things can change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's both internal and external.
Hmm.
Um, it's another example of just cause and effect and all the different conditions that come together to create a state of mind, create a moment of mind.
Hmm.
And when we really look at our experience, we see how the same experience can feel really different to us, even though the external event is the same. But
Hmm.
yes, it's no fun being lost in a forest and no
Yeah.
fun being on a boat in the storm. Well, some people might think it's fun. Not my idea, but damn.
I was on a big fishing boat, so it was kind of a little fun and a little scary at the same time, but I don't know. Once it was a small boat, and that was pretty scary, I think. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. Or like being on an airplane and going through a turbulence.
Depends on how much I've drank.
Well, and it also depends on how big. If you've ever been in a small plane and go through turbulence, you realize that
Oh, forget it. No, I can't even imagine that.
you suddenly feel very vulnerable. Ed?
Yeah, if I may react to some comments that both Mark and you made, Michael. Mark, I think you were referring to Thai Boy Scouts, and the first thing that who were caught in the cave, The first thing that I think of about Thailand is that it's a Buddhist country, and that everyone is raised with Buddhism, and the fact that it was taken for granted that meditation or thoughtfulness was the solution to perhaps being in a fatal situation. I think is shows one of the gems of Buddhism. And then Michael, when you were speaking about the one of the aspects, I forget whether it's the animal realm of smugness, of being content with just your daily activities and everything.
Yeah, that animal
animal realm. I think that Tonglen is an antidote to smugness, because in Tonglen you intentionally make yourself aware of and try to counteract or try to alleviate the suffering of other sentient beings.
Yes, and you actually actively express at least the willingness to take on the suffering of others, which is quite contrary to the self-centered nature of any of the lower realms. I think the other thing is now that we've talked about at least three of the realms, and in particular the three most intense realms, I think it's pretty easy to see why Trungpa Rinpoche called them styles of imprisonment, to go back to the title of the chapter. That any one of the realms, besides the suffering that is present in the lower realms, that any of them really confine us, limit our true nature, limit our ability to recognize our greater potential of awakening. That's really clear in the lower realms, but even in the three higher realms, that's the case. And so that's why, among other things, we're meant to reflect on the six realms of samsara. It's one of the four reminders is recognizing the unsatisfactory nature of samsara, so that we are clear in our desire for liberation from all of it.
I guess imprisonment in any realm is antithetical to the concept of shunyata and emptiness.
Yes, because each realm has this particular fixation of self and other, I and other, a particular style of solidifying a sense and a drama between the two. A drama of aggression, a drama of passion or grasping in the hungry ghost realm, a drama of ignorance and ignoring. The real aspect of the animal realm is how much is pushed away, ignored. And not even necessarily because it's threatening. Actually, you want to be aware of threats, but more just because there's just no curiosity or inquisitiveness, or it's far from any kind of notion of sacred outlook in the animal realm. And so every realm is far from that shunyata notion of openness and lack of solidity to things. There's no sense of spaciousness. Shunyata is a sense of space and openness and freedom. It's the opposite of imprisonment. In any case, I guess we could come to an end. I could put up the dedication of merit, and we'll close with that. So we can dedicate the merit generated through our practice and study to the benefit of all sentient beings who are imprisoned in the six realms. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom, may the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled, may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Michael. That was
Thank
wonderful.
you so much,
Thank you,
Michael.
Michael. It's
Michael,
very
that was
beautiful.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Michael, that's great.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, slightly better news next week, but still imprisonment. John will be our tour guide through the higher realms.
Or
Lucky
relative. Or relative. Have a good night. Yeah.
Night.
Night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
That was great, Michael. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's fun.
And
Funny because I was actually kind of anxious before starting, but just got into it.
well, I thought you did an excellent job.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we should stop recording. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, bye.